Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Hotel ballroom cast dancing shadows across the marble floor, each facet catching the warm glow of candlelight and transforming the space into something magical. Emma Larson adjusted the delicate strap of her midnight blue evening gown, her fingers trembling slightly as she surveyed the opulent charity gala surrounding her. She didn't belong here among the city's elite, and she knew it. But her firm had donated pro bono financial consulting services to the Children's Hospital Foundation, earning her an invitation to this glittering world she'd only read about in magazines. "You look like you're about to bolt," said Liam Carter, her colleague and the reason she was here tonight. He appeared beside her with 2 champagne flutes, his easy smile meant to calm her nerves. "I feel like Cinderella at the ball," Emma murmured, accepting the glass gratefully. "Except I'm pretty sure my dress didn't cost 3 months' rent, and there's definitely no fairy godmother waiting in the wings." Liam chuckled. "You're here because you earned it, Emma. Your financial analysis saved the foundation nearly $500,000 in operational costs. You belong here more than half these people who just wrote checks to ease their guilt." Emma took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles dance on her tongue as she watched the elegant crowd mingle around elaborate ice sculptures. Women in designer gowns that cost more than her annual salary glided past, their jewelry catching the light like fallen stars. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos discussed business deals between bites of caviar and sips of champagne that probably cost more per bottle than she made in a week. "There's the foundation board," Liam said, nodding toward a group near the silent auction tables. "Come on, I'll introduce you. They've been asking to meet the brilliant analyst who restructured their investment portfolio." But as they moved through the crowd, Emma found herself distracted by a commotion near the main entrance. A tall figure had just arrived, and the entire room seemed to shift toward him like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Even from across the ballroom, Emma could feel the change in energy, the way conversations paused and eyes turned. "Who is that?" she asked, though something in her chest already knew this man was different from everyone else in the room. Liam followed her gaze and whistled low. "Nathan Drake, the Nathan Drake. Tech mogul, real estate empire, investment portfolio that could fund a small country. He's probably worth more than everyone in this room combined." Nathan Drake moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of a man who owned the world, stopping to shake hands and exchange pleasantries with people who clearly hung on his every word. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it and sharp features that belonged on magazine covers. But it was his eyes that caught Emma's attention as he drew closer, dark and intelligent. They seemed to see everything and everyone, missing nothing. "He donates millions to this foundation every year," Liam continued, "but he usually just sends a check. I've never seen him actually attend one of these events." Those dark eyes were scanning the room now, and Emma felt her breath catch when they found hers across the crowded ballroom. Time seemed to slow, the conversations around them fading to a distant hum. Nathan's gaze held hers for a moment that stretched like eternity, and Emma felt something electric pass between them: recognition, attraction, something deeper that she couldn't name. Then someone stepped into his line of sight, breaking the spell, and Emma realized she'd been holding her breath. "Emma, are you all right?" Liam's voice seemed to come from very far away. "I'm fine," she said quickly, though her heart was racing like she'd just run a marathon. "Just the champagne, I think." But she couldn't stop watching Nathan as he made his way through the crowd. There was something magnetic about him beyond his obvious wealth and power, the way he listened when people spoke to him, as if they were the only person in the room, the genuine smile that transformed his face when he laughed at something amusing. The careful way he helped an elderly woman navigate around a waiter carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Mr. Drake." The foundation director, Evelyn Harper, had spotted him and was hurrying over with several board members in tow. "What a wonderful surprise. We weren't expecting you tonight." Nathan's voice was warm and rich, with just a hint of roughness that made Emma's pulse quicken. "I decided it was time I saw firsthand how my contributions are being put to work." "Excellent. There are so many people I'd love you to meet: our volunteer coordinator, Dr. Clara Bennett, and our new financial consultant." Evelyn's eyes searched the crowd, until they landed on Emma. Emma Larson. Perfect timing. Emma felt her cheeks flush as Evelyn beckoned her over. Liam gave her an encouraging nudge, and somehow her feet carried her forward, even though every instinct told her to flee. Up close, Nathan Drake was even more overwhelming taller than she'd expected, with a presence that seemed to fill the space around him. "Mr. Drake, I'd like you to meet Emma Larson," Evelyn said with obvious pride. "She's the financial genius who completely revolutionized our investment strategy. Emma, this is Nathan Drake, our most generous patron." Nathan extended his hand, and when Emma took it, she felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm. His hand was warm and strong, with calluses that suggested he wasn't afraid of actual work despite his wealth. "Larson," he said, and the way he pronounced her name sent shivers down her spine. "Evelyn has been singing your praises all evening. I understand you've saved the foundation quite a bit of money. You had just reorganized some underperforming assets and streamlined the operational budget," Emma said, proud that her voice came out steady despite the way his thumb was brushing across her knuckles. "Nothing revolutionary." "Modest, too," Nathan said, his eyes crinkling with genuine amusement. "I've looked at the Foundation's books for years. What you accomplished in 3 months would have taken most consultants 3 years." The conversation flowed around them as Evelyn introduced Nathan to other board members, but Emma found herself lost in the way Nathan's attention kept returning to her. When he asked about her background, she found herself telling him about growing up in a working-class neighborhood, putting herself through college, building her consulting practice from nothing. She expected to see the polite disinterest she usually encountered when mixing with the wealthy, but instead found genuine fascination. "You built your firm from scratch?" Nathan asked during a quiet moment when the others had moved to examine a particularly impressive auction item. "Started in my studio apartment with a used laptop and a lot of determination," Emma admitted. "It's not much compared to what you've built, but it's mine." "It's everything," Nathan said with an intensity that surprised her. "Building something from nothing, proving yourself on merit alone that's worth more than inheriting an empire." There was something almost bitter in his tone, and Emma found herself studying his face more carefully. Beneath the confidence and charm, she glimpsed something else, a loneliness, perhaps, or the weight of expectations he'd never asked for. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed across the ballroom, "dinner is served." As the crowd began moving toward the dining room, Nathan touched Emma's arm gently. "Would you do me the honor of sitting at my table? I find myself curious to learn more about the woman who's managed to impress Evelyn Harper so thoroughly." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she nodded, not trusting her voice. As Nathan offered his arm and led her toward the dining room, she caught sight of an elegant older woman watching them from across the room. The woman's eyes were cold and calculating as they tracked Nathan and Emma's movement. Her red lips curved in what might have been a smile, but felt more like a threat. Emma shivered, though she couldn't say why, and let Nathan guide her into what would become the most transformative evening of her life. Chapter 2. The Whirlwind Romance. 3 weeks after the charity gala, Emma still felt like she was living in a dream. Nathan had called the very next morning, his voice warm with sleep and something deeper, as he asked if she'd join him for coffee. That coffee had turned into lunch into an impromptu tour of his favorite art gallery, and the art gallery into dinner at a small Italian restaurant where the owner knew Nathan by name and treated them like family. "You didn't have to have your driver pick me up," Emma said as she slid into the leather seat of Nathan's Mercedes, trying not to feel overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding her. It was their 10th date, though she'd stopped counting after the 5th, and she still wasn't used to the way Nathan insisted on taking care of every detail. "I wanted to," Nathan said simply, his hand finding hers across the seat. "Besides, I have something special planned tonight." The something special turned out to be a private showing at the planetarium, where they lay on blankets beneath a sky full of artificial stars, while Nathan told her about his childhood dreams of becoming an astronaut. "Before I inherited the business empire," he said, his voice soft in the darkness, "I wanted to explore the universe, map new star systems, discover new worlds." "What changed?" Emma asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "My father died when I was 22, Nathan said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Suddenly, I was responsible for thousands of employees, billions in assets, my mother's future. The stars felt very far away after that." Emma turned on her side to face him, seeing the pain he rarely let show. "Do you ever regret it?" "I did," Nathan said, meeting her eyes. "Until 3 weeks ago." The kiss that followed was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. And Emma felt herself falling deeper with each passing moment, each shared secret, each time Nathan looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. What she didn't see was the figure watching them from the shadows of the planetarium's observation deck. Victoria Drake stood perfectly still, her manicured fingers gripping the railing as she observed her son's growing infatuation with the girl she'd handpicked for destruction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. By the end of their second month together, Emma had fallen completely and irrevocably in love. Nathan was unlike any man she'd ever known, brilliant and driven, yes, but also surprisingly tender. He told her about the crushing pressure of living up to his father's legacy, the profound isolation that came with wealth, the way people looked at him and saw dollar signs instead of a human being with hopes and fears. "Sometimes I feel like I'm performing a role," he confessed one evening as they walked hand in hand through Central Park, playing the part of Nathan Drake, billionaire CEO, when all I really want is to be Nathan, the man who builds model airplanes in his spare time and gets genuinely excited about obscure documentaries on ancient civilizations. "You don't have to perform for me," Emma said, stopping to face him beneath a street lamp. "I fell in love with Nathan, who quotes random historical facts when he's nervous and makes terrible jokes when he's trying to be charming." "My jokes aren't terrible," Nathan protested with mock indignation. "Your joke about the tax attorney and the endangered species was objectively awful," Emma laughed, reaching up to straighten his tie, even though it was already perfect. "You laughed," Nathan pointed out, catching her hands and bringing them to his lips. "I was being polite." "You were being perfect," Nathan said, and the sincerity in his voice made Emma's heart skip. "Emma, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. "What is it?" "I love you," Nathan said, the words coming out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for weeks. "I know it's only been 2 months, and I know this is fast, but I've never felt anything like this before. You make me want to be the man I was always meant to be, not the one everyone expects me to be." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes as she reached up to cup his face. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it scares me sometimes." Nathan's response was to kiss her with a passion that left them both breathless, right there under the street lamp, like something out of an old movie. When they finally broke apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. "Emma," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've been carrying something around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He pulled out a small velvet box that seemed to appear from nowhere. "I bought this the day after our first date, and I've been terrified to give it to you, because I thought you'd think I'd lost my mind." "Nathan," she began, but he was already dropping to one knee, pulling out a ring box that seemed to appear from nowhere. "I know it's crazy," Nathan said, his hands shaking slightly as he opened the box to reveal a stunning vintage diamond that caught the lamplight like captured starfire. "I know we haven't been together long, and I know you probably think I've lost my mind, but Emma, I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Emma stared down at this incredible man kneeling in front of her, offering her everything she'd never dared to dream of, and felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. "Yes," she breathed, then louder. "Yes, of course. Yes." Nathan's whoop of joy echoed through the park as he slipped the ring onto her finger and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until they were both dizzy with laughter and love. From her penthouse apartment across the city, Victoria Drake smiled coldly as she set down her binoculars and reached for her phone. "It's done," she said when her private investigator answered. "They're engaged. Begin phase 2 immediately." The wedding planning consumed the next month in a whirlwind of cake tastings, venue selections, and dress fittings. Nathan insisted on handling most of the arrangements, claiming he wanted Emma to enjoy the process rather than stress about details. What Emma didn't realize was that Victoria was orchestrating everything from behind the scenes, playing the role of supportive future mother-in-law, while carefully positioning all the pieces for Emma's downfall. "She seems lovely, darling," Victoria said over lunch at the country club, her voice dripping with false warmth as she discussed Emma with her circle of society friends. "A bit common, perhaps," but Nathan seems quite taken with her. Common? Asked Margaret Thornton, one of Victoria's oldest friends and biggest gossips. How so? Oh, Victoria waved her hand dismissively. Working-class background, built her little business from nothing. Very admirable, really, in its own way, though one does wonder about her motivations. The seed was planted expertly, and Victoria watched with satisfaction as Margaret's eyebrows raised in understanding. By evening, half of their social circle would be whispering about Nathan's gold-digging fiancé. Meanwhile, Emma remained blissfully unaware of the whispers spreading through high society. She was too caught up in the magic of planning a life with Nathan, too overwhelmed by his constant attention and affection to notice the subtle signs of manipulation surrounding them. I can't believe this is really happening, Emma said one evening as she and Nathan reviewed seating charts in his home office. She was curled up in the leather chair beside his desk, her engagement ring catching the lamplight as she gestured. 3 months ago, I was just another single woman trying to build her career. Now I'm marrying the most incredible man I've ever met. Nathan looked up from his laptop, his expression soft with adoration. 3 months ago, I was just going through the motions of living. Now I wake up every morning excited about the future we're building together. He stood and crossed to her chair, kneeling beside it to take her hands in his. Emma, I need you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever anyone says, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. I would give up everything, the money, the business, all of it to spend my life with you. Nathan, Emma said, touched by the intensity in his voice, what brought this on? Just promise me, Nathan said urgently. Promise me you'll remember that I love you more than anything in this world, no matter what. I promise, Emma said, leaning down to kiss him softly. I love you too. Nothing could ever change that. Outside Nathan's office, Victoria stood listening in the hallway, her perfectly manicured hand pressed to her heart in mock emotion. How touching, she murmured to herself. Such a shame it won't last. The wedding was set for the following Saturday, a small, intimate ceremony at Nathan's estate, followed by a reception for 200 of their closest friends and family. As the day approached, Emma found herself moving through the preparations in a haze of happiness, completely unaware that Victoria was putting the finishing touches on a plan that would destroy her newfound joy in the most devastating way possible. But for now, Emma was simply a woman in love, counting down the days until she could officially become Mrs. Nathan Drake, believing with all her heart that their love could conquer anything the world might throw at them. Chapter 3. The Wedding Night Revelation. The wedding had been everything Emma had dreamed of, and more. Standing beneath the rose-covered arbor in Nathan's garden, surrounded by the scent of jasmine and the warm glow of hundreds of candles, she had felt like the luckiest woman alive. Nathan's voice had broken with emotion as he recited his vows, promising to love her through every storm, to choose her every day for the rest of his life. You are my heart, he had whispered as he slipped the platinum band onto her finger. My home, my future. I love you, Emma Drake. Emma Drake. She was Emma Drake now, and the reality of it made her giddy with joy. The reception had been a blur of congratulations, laughter, and dancing until her feet ached in her delicate satin shoes. Nathan had barely left her side all evening, his hand constantly finding hers, his eyes soft with wonder every time he looked at her. Have I mentioned you're the most beautiful bride who ever lived? He murmured during their last dance, his lips brushing against her ear as they swayed to the soft music. Only about 50 times tonight, Emma laughed, her arms tightening around his neck. But I don't mind hearing it again. You're the most beautiful bride who ever lived, Nathan repeated obediently, then spun her gracefully as the song came to an end. Ready to go home, Mrs. Drake? The way he said her new name sent shivers of anticipation down Emma's spine. They had waited, at Nathan's old-fashioned insistence, to make love, though the chemistry between them had nearly driven them both mad with wanting during their engagement. Tonight would be their first time together as husband and wife, the beginning of their forever. More than ready, Emma said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. Nathan's penthouse apartment had been transformed for their wedding night. Rose petals created a path from the elevator to the master bedroom. Candles flickered on every surface, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Nathan had thought of everything, just as he always did. Nathan, Emma breathed, taking in the romantic scene. It's perfect. You're perfect, Nathan said, coming up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. His lips found the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, and Emma melted back against him. I love you so much, Emma. I can't believe you're actually my wife. Emma turned in his arms, her hands sliding up to frame his face. Believe it, she whispered. I'm yours, Nathan. Completely yours. Nathan's response was a kiss that spoke of months of restraint finally released. Of love and desire and promise all wrapped together. Emma lost herself in the feeling of his hands tangling in her hair, in the way he whispered her name like a prayer against her lips. Let me, Nathan said softly, his fingers finding the delicate pearl buttons that ran down the back of her wedding dress. I've been dreaming of this moment since the day I met you. Emma's heart raced as Nathan's fingers worked slowly, reverently, each freed button followed by a soft kiss pressed to the newly exposed skin. The dress was intricate, with dozens of tiny pearl buttons, and Nathan seemed determined to savor the unveiling of his bride. You're trembling, Nathan observed, his voice husky with desire and tenderness. Good trembling, Emma assured him, her own hands working at the buttons of his shirt. Very good trembling. Nathan's laugh was low and intimate as he helped her slide his shirt from his shoulders. She had seen him shirtless before they'd spent many afternoons at his pool, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he was her husband, and she was his wife, and nothing would ever come between them. I love you, Nathan said again, his forehead resting against hers as his hands stilled on her dress. Emma. The elevator chimed, cutting through the intimate moment like a knife. Nathan froze, his eyes snapping toward the hallway in confusion. Were you expecting someone? Emma asked, suddenly self-conscious about her half-unbuttoned dress. No, Nathan said, his brow furrowing. The security code was changed for tonight. Nathaniel? Victoria's voice echoed through the apartment, sharp and urgent. Nathaniel, darling, are you here? Something terrible has happened. I need to speak with you immediately. Nathan's face went pale. Mother, he said quickly, helping Emma secure her dress as footsteps clicked rapidly across the marble floor. What could possibly be so urgent that... There you are. Victoria appeared in the bedroom doorway, her elegant black dress a stark contrast to the romantic scene around them. Her hands clutched a manila folder thick with documents. I'm so sorry to interrupt, darling, but this couldn't wait until morning. Mother, what the hell are you doing here? Nathan demanded, stepping protectively in front of Emma. This is our wedding night. Yes, and that's exactly why this can't wait, Victoria said, her voice heavy with what sounded like grief. Nathaniel, I've discovered something terrible. Something about your wife. Emma felt ice begin to form in her stomach. What are you talking about? Victoria's eyes, when they turned to Emma, were filled with what looked like pity. My dear, I know you must have thought you were very clever. But really, in this day and age, did you think we wouldn't investigate? Investigate what? Nathan's voice was dangerous now, and Emma could see the muscle in his jaw ticking. Mother, you need to explain yourself right now. The private investigator's report came in this afternoon, Victoria said, opening the folder with shaking hands. I didn't want to ruin the wedding, but Nathaniel, she's been feeding information to your competitor's corporate secrets, financial data, everything. That's impossible, Emma said, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. Bank records showing payments from Meridian Industries, Victoria continued, pulling out papers and photographs. Email communications with their head of acquisitions, meeting logs, phone records. It's all here, darling. Nathan snatched the folder from his mother's hands, his face a mask of confusion and growing dread as he scanned the documents. Emma watched in mounting horror as his expression shifted from disbelief to shock to something that looked like soul-deep betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming, professionally crafted, and designed to exploit every insecurity Nathan had ever harbored about being used for his wealth. This can't be real, Nathan said, his voice hollow as he stared at bank statements bearing Emma's name and signature. Emma, tell me this isn't real. Nathan, those aren't real, Emma said desperately, reaching for him. I don't know how she got these, but they're not real. I would never betray you. The photography is quite clear, Victoria said sadly. Here's Emma leaving Meridian Industries headquarters 3 weeks ago. And here's another from last month. The investigators followed her, Nathaniel. They have everything documented. Emma stared at the photographs in Nathan's Hans professional surveillance shots that clearly showed her entering and leaving the Meridian building. Except she'd never been to that building in her life. These are fake, she said, her voice rising in panic. Nathan, I swear to you, I've never even heard of Meridian Industries before tonight. Really? Victoria said, pulling out another sheet of paper. Because according to their payroll records, you've been on their consulting roster for 6 months. They've paid you over $200,000 for inside information about Drake Industries. Nathan's hands were shaking now as he stared at the bank statements, bearing Emma's name and account number, showing regular deposits from Meridian Industries. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and completely fabricated. I don't understand, Nathan said, his voice hollow. Emma, what is this? It's not real, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. Nathan, I love you. I would never, ever betray you. You have to believe me. The emails are quite explicit, Victoria continued relentlessly. Here's one from last week where Emma promises to deliver the Henderson acquisition files, and another from 3 days ago where she confirms the transfer of your personal investment portfolio details. Nathan looked up at Emma, and she felt her heart shatter at the pain and confusion in his eyes. The Henderson deal, he said quietly. How did you know about the Henderson deal? It was confidential. I don't know anything about a Henderson deal, Emma said desperately. Nathan, please, you know me. You know I would never. She's very good, Victoria said with what sounded like genuine admiration. I have to give her credit. The performance has been flawless. Even I almost believed she truly cared for you. Stop, Nathan said, his voice breaking. Just stop. The bedroom fell silent except for Emma's quiet sobs and the sound of papers rustling as Nathan continued to look through the fabricated evidence. Each document was perfectly crafted, each piece of supposed proof building an airtight case against her. Nathaniel, Victoria said gently, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. I know this is devastating, but better to know now than after she'd gained access to everything. Imagine what she could have done with full access to your accounts, your business dealings. I need you to leave, Nathan said without looking up from the papers. Both of you. I need to think. Nathan. No, Emma pleaded, reaching for him again. Don't shut me out. We can figure this out together. There has to be an explanation. The explanation is quite clear, dear. Victoria said smoothly. You're a gold digger who got caught. I am not a gold digger, Emma exploded, her grief transforming into fury. I love your son more than my own life. I would die before I hurt him. Very touching, Victoria said dryly. Nathaniel, shall I call security to escort her out? No, Nathan said quickly, finally looking up. His eyes were red-rimmed and filled with a pain so deep that Emma felt it like a physical blow. Emma, I need you to explain this. All of this. I can't explain it because it's not real, Emma said, her voice breaking. Nathan, please. Look at me. Look into my eyes and tell me you see someone who could betray you. Nathan stared at her for a long moment, and Emma held her breath, praying that their love would be stronger than his mother's lies. But when he spoke, his voice was cold and foreign. I trusted you with everything, he said quietly. My heart, my secrets, my future, and all this time, you were using me. No, Emma whispered. Nathan, no. Until you can apologize to my mother for deceiving us both, Nathan said, the words coming out stilted and formal, as if he were reading from a script, I will never touch you again. The words hit Emma like a physical blow, doubling her over with pain. She looked at Victoria, who was watching the destruction of her son's marriage with satisfied eyes, and finally understood the depth of the trap that had been laid for her. I will never apologize for something I didn't do, Emma said, finding some core of strength she didn't know she possessed. Nathan, when you come to your senses, I'll be waiting, but I won't lie to save your mother's twisted conscience. With that, Emma turned and walked out of the bedroom, leaving behind the rose petals and candles, the romantic dreams and whispered promises. Her marriage was over before it had truly begun, destroyed by lies she couldn't prove were false. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she heard Victoria's voice, soft and victorious. Don't worry, darling. Mother will help you through this. You're better off without her. Chapter 4. The Cold War. The Drake mansion had become a mausoleum of broken dreams. Emma moved through its opulent halls like a ghost, her footsteps echoing on marble floors that had once promised forever, but now felt like the walls of an elegant prison. 3 weeks had passed since their wedding night catastrophe, and the silence between her and Nathan had become a living entity, suffocating them both with its relentless presence. She had taken up residence in the East Wing guest suite, as far from Nathan's master bedroom as she could get, while still technically living in the same house. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had more space now than in her old studio apartment. But she'd never felt more trapped. Every morning, Emma woke to the sound of Nathan's footsteps in the hallway as he left for work before dawn, clearly timing his departure to avoid seeing her. Every evening, she heard his car in the driveway long after dinner, ensuring he wouldn't have to share a meal with the wife he no longer trusted. The staff had been dismissed, all except Mrs. Lynn, the housekeeper who had worked for the Drake family for 20 years. Emma suspected Nathan had kept her on to act as a buffer, someone to ensure they were never truly alone together. Mrs. Lynn was kind but professional, treating Emma with the same courtesy she showed all members of the household, though Emma sometimes caught her watching with sympathetic eyes. Mr. Drake asked me to inform you that he'll be working late again tonight, Mrs. Lynn said one Thursday morning as Emma sat alone at the massive dining room table, picking at her breakfast. He won't be home for dinner. Of course not, Emma murmured, not looking up from her untouched eggs Benedict. Has he been home for dinner at all this week? Mrs. Lynn's silence was answer enough. Emma pushed her plate away and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the garden where they'd been married less than a month ago. The roses were still blooming, their petals now scattered across the ground like confetti from a celebration that felt like a lifetime ago. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, remembering how Nathan had kissed her beneath the arbor, how his voice had shaken as he promised to love her forever. The memory felt like pressing on a bruise, a painful, but somehow necessary. Mrs. Drake, Mrs. Lynn's voice was gentle. Perhaps you'd like to go out today? Visit friends? Go shopping? The fresh air might do you good. Emma almost laughed. What friends? The few relationships she'd maintained during her whirlwind romance with Nathan had withered under the intensity of their courtship. Her former colleagues treated her with barely concealed resentment. She'd landed the ultimate prize, the billionaire husband, and then somehow managed to screw it up. The society wives who might have welcomed her into their circle whispered behind her back, thanks to Victoria's careful seed planting. I think I'll just work, Emma said, heading toward the home office Nathan had set up for her. At least her consulting business was still intact, though she wondered how long that would last once word of her supposed corporate espionage spread. The office was beautiful dark wood and leather, with state-of-the-art equipment and a view of the city that would have taken her breath away under different circumstances. Nathan had designed it specifically for her, asking detailed questions about her workflow and preferences. The thoughtfulness of it all made her chest ache with longing. She was deep in financial projections for a nonprofit client when she heard the front door open earlier than usual. Emma's fingers stilled on the keyboard as she listened to Nathan's familiar footsteps crossing the foyer. For a moment, hope fluttered in her chest. Maybe he'd come home early to talk to her, to finally hear her side of the story. But the footsteps moved past her office without stopping, heading toward his own study. Emma heard the door close with a decisive click, followed by the murmur of phone conversations that would likely last until well past midnight. That evening, driven by a desperation she could no longer contain, Emma waited in the kitchen. Nathan had to eat eventually, and when he came looking for sustenance, she would be there. They needed to talk, really talk, without Victoria's poison flowing between them like acid. At nearly 10 o'clock, Nathan finally appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. He froze when he saw her sitting at the breakfast counter, his expression shifting from surprise to something carefully blank. Emma, he said, his voice formally polite. I didn't expect to see you. When would you expect to see me? Emma asked, fighting to keep her tone calm. You leave before I wake up and come home after I go to bed. We live in the same house, but I haven't seen you in 4 days. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I've been busy. Too busy to talk to your wife? My wife, who's been selling my secrets to competitors. The words came out sharp and bitter, and Emma flinched as if he'd slapped her. I didn't sell anything to anyone, Emma said quietly. Nathan, please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. Look at those documents again. Really look at them. The dates, the signatures, the account number something isn't right. Nathan's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it automatically. I have a call with Tokyo in 10 minutes. Of course you do, Emma said, hurt bleeding through her careful composure. You always have a call or a meeting or somewhere else to be anything to avoid dealing with this. Dealing with what, exactly? Nathan's voice rose slightly. The first real emotion he'd shown her in weeks. Dealing with the fact that my wife has been betraying me from the beginning? That everything between us was a lie? Everything between us was real. Emma stood up, her own voice breaking with frustration. Our first date, our first kiss, the way you told me about your dreams under those fake stars, all of it was real, Nathan. The only lie is whatever your mother convinced you to believe. Nathan's expression shuddered at the mention of Victoria. My mother has nothing to do with this. She was trying to protect me. From what? From being happy? Emma took a step toward him, then stopped when he moved back. Nathan, your mother has manipulated you your entire life. She controls everything, your business, your social circle, your relationships. Did you ever wonder why none of your previous girlfriends lasted more than a few months? Stop, Nathan said, his voice dangerous now. Don't you dare try to turn this around on my mother. She's the only family I have left. And I'm your wife. Emma's composure finally cracked. Tears streaming down her face. Or I was supposed to be. I love you, Nathan. I love you so much it's destroying me to watch you shut me out like this. For a moment, Nathan's carefully controlled mask slipped, and Emma saw the pain underneath raw and bleeding and terrible. His hand moved toward her, an unconscious gesture that he caught and pulled back. Don't, he said quietly. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Then listen to me, Emma pleaded. Just listen. I've never heard of Meridian Industries before that night. I've never been to their building, never spoken to their employees, never received a single payment from them. Someone is setting me up. And the only person who benefits from destroying our marriage is... Enough. Nathan's voice cut through her words like ice. I've seen the evidence, Emma. Bank records don't lie. Photographs don't lie. But they can be faked, Emma said desperately. Nathan, you're a businessman. You know how easy it is to create false documents in the digital age. Please, just have your people investigate Meridian Industries. Check their employee records, their real client list. You'll see. I'll see what I need to see, Nathan said. But something in his voice suggested he wasn't as certain as he pretended. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. What lawyers, Nathan? What are you talking about? Nathan's phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it with what looked like relief at the interruption. I have that call, he said, already backing toward the door. We'll talk about this later. But Emma knew they wouldn't. Nathan was drowning in his mother's lies, and he was too proud, too hurt, too overwhelmed to reach for the lifeline Emma kept throwing him. As the days stretched into another week, the Cold War between them intensified. They moved around each other like polite strangers, exchanging pleasantries about weather and household matters, while carefully avoiding anything that mattered. Emma caught Nathan watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, and she could see the conflict in his eyes, the part of him that still loved her, warring with the part that believed she'd betrayed him. But it was the surveillance that truly drove home how completely their marriage had been poisoned. The men in suits who appeared at odd intervals around the mansion grounds, the sense of being watched even in her own home, the way her personal correspondence seemed to arrive slightly delayed. Nathan hadn't ordered this surveillance. Emma could see his surprise and discomfort when he noticed it too. This was all Victoria's doing, ensuring that even if Nathan began to doubt the evidence against Emma, there would be constant reminders of why he couldn't trust her. It was Mrs. Lynn who finally confirmed Emma's suspicions. Mrs. Drake, the housekeeper said quietly one morning as she set down Emma's coffee. I think you should know there are people watching the house. Watching you. Emma's blood ran cold. What kind of people? Private investigators, I think. Mrs. Victoria hired them. Mrs. Lynn glanced around nervously, clearly uncomfortable with sharing this information. They've been asking questions about your daily routine, your phone calls, your visitors. My visitors? Emma almost laughed hysterically. What visitors? I don't have any visitors. That's what I told them, Mrs. Lynn said gently. Mrs. Drake, I've worked for this family for 20 years. I've seen Mrs. Victoria manipulate situations before. You might want to be very careful. That night, Emma lay in her lonely bed, listening to the sounds of Nathan moving around in his study 3 floors away, and finally understood the full scope of the trap she was caught in. Victoria wasn't just content to destroy their marriage. She wanted to destroy Emma completely. The surveillance, the constant scrutiny, the isolation it was all designed to drive her away or break her spirit entirely. But Emma had grown up fighting for everything she'd ever achieved, and she wasn't about to surrender without a battle. If Victoria wanted a war, she'd have one. The only question was how much collateral damage Nathan's heart could survive. Chapter 5. The Divorce. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Emma was reviewing quarterly reports for a client, trying to lose herself in numbers that made sense when nothing else in her life did. Nathan's voice on the intercom was formal, distant, but she could hear something underneath exhaustion, maybe, or resignation. Emma, could you come to my study, please? There's something we need to discuss. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she made her way through the mansion's corridors. It had been 2 days since their devastating confrontation in the kitchen. Days of silence, so oppressive it felt like being buried alive. Maybe Nathan had finally come to his senses. Maybe he'd investigated Meridian Industries and discovered the truth. Emma stopped in the doorway of Nathan's study, her hopes crashing to the ground. Victoria sat in one of the leather chairs across from Nathan's desk, her expression perfectly composed except for the gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. Nathan stood by the window, with his back to the room, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Close the door, please," Nathan said without turning around. Emma's hands shook as she followed his instruction, the soft click of the latch sounding like the closing of a coffin. Whatever was about to happen, she knew it was going to shatter what was left of her world. "Sit down, dear," Victoria said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her with false kindness. "This is difficult for all of us." "I'll stand," Emma said, crossing her arms over her chest. She wasn't going to make this easy for them. Nathan finally turned from the window, and Emma's breath caught at the sight of him. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. There were papers scattered across his desk, and Emma could see her name on several of them. "Emma," Nathan began, then stopped, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't... I never wanted..." "Just tell her, Nathaniel," Victoria said gently. "Prolonging this is cruel to everyone involved." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. When he looked at Emma, his expression was carefully blank. "I filed for divorce." The words hit Emma like a physical blow, even though some part of her had been expecting them. She gripped the back of the chair to keep herself upright as the room seemed to tilt around her. "You what?" she whispered. "The papers were filed this morning," Nathan continued, his voice mechanical. "My lawyers have prepared a settlement offer that I think you'll find generous." "Generous?" Emma's voice cracked on the word. "Nathan, we've been married for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and you're giving up on us?" "I'm not giving up," Nathan said, and for the first time, emotion bled through his controlled facade. "You gave up the moment you decided to betray me." "I never betrayed you." Emma's composure finally shattered completely. "How many times do I have to tell you that? I love you, Nathan. I love you more than my own life. And you're throwing that away because your mother... This has nothing to do with my mother." Nathan cut her off sharply. "This is about trust, Emma. About the foundation of our marriage being built on lies. The only lies are the ones she's feeding you," Emma said, pointing at Victoria, who was watching the exchange with barely concealed pleasure. "Nathan, please, look at me. Really look at me. Do you see someone who could deceive you? Do you see someone who could fake everything we shared?" For a moment, Nathan's mask slipped, and Emma saw the pain underneath, raw and bleeding and desperate. His hand moved toward her unconsciously, then stopped. The evidence, he began, can be manufactured. Emma finished. Nathan, you're a smart man. You built a business empire from nothing. You know how easy it is to create false documents, fake photographs, bogus bank records. Please, just investigate. Have your people look into this properly. Nathan was quiet for so long that Emma dared to hope. Then Victoria cleared her throat delicately. Nathaniel, darling, perhaps you should tell Emma about the ultimatum. Emma's blood turned to ice. What ultimatum? Nathan's face went pale, and he shot his mother a look that could have cut glass. Mother, that's not. What ultimatum, Nathan? Emma demanded, her voice rising. Victoria smiled with false sympathy. The board of directors has some concerns about recent events. Naturally, they're worried about corporate security. Given the circumstances, understanding crashed over Emma like a cold wave. They want you to divorce me, or they'll remove you from the company. It's not that simple, Nathan said desperately. The board isn't just questioning my judgment. They're threatening a complete restructuring that would eliminate thousands of jobs. If I'm removed as CEO, the company will be carved up and sold off in pieces. I thought if I could divorce you quickly and quietly, deal with the situation, then somehow find a way to prove your innocence and win you back once the crisis passed. You thought you could manipulate me the same way your mother manipulated you, Emma said, seeing the truth with devastating clarity. You thought you could make decisions for me, about my life, without even asking what I wanted. And you orchestrated this, Emma said, staring at Victoria with a mixture of horror and grudging admiration. You planned all of this, the fake evidence, the board pressure, even our meeting at the charity gala. I have no idea what you're talking about, Victoria said innocently. I simply brought some concerning information to the board's attention. They reached their own conclusions. Emma turned back to Nathan, who was staring at the floor like he couldn't bear to meet her eyes. So this is it? You're choosing the company over me? I'm protecting what my father built, Nathan said quietly. I'm protecting thousands of jobs, billions in assets, the legacy that will support our. He stopped abruptly. Our what? Emma asked. Our future? We don't have a future, Nathan. You just made sure of that. Nathan finally looked up, and Emma saw something break behind his eyes. The settlement includes a substantial financial package. You'll never have to work again, never have to worry about money. You can start over anywhere you want. I don't want your money, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. I want my husband. I want the man who promised to love me through every storm, who said he'd choose me every day for the rest of his life. That man believed he was marrying someone honest, Nathan said, his voice hollow. That man was naive. That man was right the first time, Emma said desperately. Nathan, please, don't do this. Don't let her win. This isn't about winning or losing, Nathan said. This is about doing what's necessary. Emma stared at him for a long moment, seeing the man she loved disappearing behind walls of hurt and duty and misguided loyalty. Finally, she nodded. Fine, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Where do I sign? Nathan flinched as if she'd struck him. Emma, you don't have to decide right now. You can take time to review the terms, have your own lawyer look at. Where do I sign? Emma repeated. With shaking hands, Nathan shuffled through the papers on his desk until he found the divorce documents. Emma took the pen he offered and signed her name with quick, decisive strokes, not bothering to read the terms. She didn't care about money or property or any of it. There, she said, setting the pen down with a sharp click that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Is there anything else you need from me? Emma, Nathan said, and his voice broke on her name like a man drowning. I'm sorry. I'm so desperately sorry this happened. So am I, Emma said, looking directly into his eyes with a strength that surprised them both. I'm sorry you're so terrified of being hurt that you'd rather destroy something beautiful than fight for it. I'm sorry you trust your mother's lies more than your wife's love. And I'm sorry that when you finally realize the truth, it's going to destroy you. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. For what it's worth, Nathan, I would have chosen you over money, over security, over everything. I would have chosen you every single time. Emma walked out of the study with her head held high, ignoring Victoria's satisfied smile and Nathan's stricken expression. She made it all the way to her room before she collapsed, sobbing into her hands as the magnitude of what had just happened hit her. Her marriage was over. The great love story she'd believed in so completely had been destroyed by lies and manipulation and fear. In 3 weeks, she'd gone from the happiest woman alive to a divorced pariah with nothing left but her pride and her determination to rebuild. As she packed her few belongings, Emma could hear muffled voices from Nathan's study Victoria's soothing tones and Nathan's responding rumble. She was probably consoling him, telling him he'd made the right choice, reassuring him that he was better off without his gold-digging wife. Emma paused in her packing, a fierce resolve settling over her. Victoria thought she'd won, thought she'd successfully removed the threat to her control over Nathan's life. But Emma wasn't just going to disappear quietly. She was going to build something bigger and better than anything she'd lost. And someday, when Nathan finally saw through his mother's lies, Emma was going to make sure she was strong enough that she didn't need him to save her. She was going to save herself. 2 hours later, Emma walked out of the Drake mansion for the last time, carrying only a small suitcase and her mother's jewelry. She didn't look back at the house where she'd been so briefly, impossibly happy. She had a life to rebuild, and she was going to make it magnificent. Chapter 6. The Revelation. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days after Emma walked out of his life, Nathan Drake sat in his corner office, staring at quarterly reports that might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all the attention he could pay them. The numbers blurred together as his mind wandered, as it so often did these days, to memories he couldn't seem to banish, no matter how hard he tried. The business was thriving. Drake Industries had seen record profits for 6 consecutive quarters, expanded into 3 new markets, and acquired 2 major competitors. By every measurable standard, Nathan was more successful than he'd ever been. He was also more miserable than he'd thought possible. He'd thrown himself into work with single-minded determination after the divorce, staying late every night, traveling constantly, taking on projects that would have challenged him even at his best. Anything to avoid going home to the mansion that still smelled faintly of jasmine and held echoes of laughter that would never return. Mr. Drake, Oliver Hayes knocked softly on the office door, his expression concerned. "It's nearly 9. Perhaps you should head home." Nathan looked up from the reports he hadn't actually been reading. Oliver had been his assistant for 8 years, had seen him through his father's death, the company expansion, and the disaster of his marriage. If anyone understood the depth of Nathan's current isolation, it was Oliver. Just finishing up, Nathan lied, gesturing vaguely at the papers scattered across his desk. "You go ahead. I'll be right behind you." Oliver hesitated in the doorway. "Sir, with respect, you said that yesterday. And the day before. When was the last time you went home before midnight?" Nathan couldn't remember. The mansion felt like a mausoleum now, filled with staff who spoke in whispers, and a mother who watched him with satisfied eyes. He'd moved out of the master bedroom after the divorce, too many memories of what might have been, and now lived like a guest in his own home. "I'm fine, Oliver," Nathan said, forcing a smile. "Really? Go home to your family." Oliver looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded reluctantly. "I'll see you in the morning, sir. Try to get some sleep." After Oliver left, Nathan abandoned any pretense of working and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Emma was living her life without him. He'd hired private investigators initially not to spy on her, but just to make sure she was safe, that she'd landed on her feet after their catastrophic end. The reports had been brief. She'd moved across the country, started her own consulting firm, seemed to be doing well professionally. He'd stopped the surveillance after 6 months, partly because it felt like an invasion of her privacy, and partly because the reports were destroying him. Each confirmation that she was building a life without him felt like losing her all over again. Nathan pressed his palm against the cool glass and wondered, not for the first time, if he'd made the most catastrophic mistake of his life. The evidence against Emma had been overwhelming, professionally assembled, and completely convincing. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between sleep and waking, he remembered the look in her eyes when she'd signed those divorce papers not guilty or relieved, but heartbroken and betrayed. A soft chime from Oliver's computer in the outer office interrupted his brooding. Nathan frowned. Oliver was meticulous about logging off, never leaving sensitive information accessible. Something must have gone wrong with the automatic logout system. Nathan walked into the assistant's office to power down the system manually, but stopped when he saw an email notification flashing on the screen. The subject line made his blood run cold. Payment. E. Larson Project. Oliver had been conducting a routine audit of company expenses, Nathan realized. Seeing the spreadsheets open on the desktop, he must have discovered some irregularities in payments made through Victoria's discretionary fund and been investigating them when he left for the evening. With trembling fingers, Nathan clicked on the email. What he saw made his world collapse. Mr. Hayes, this confirms receipt of final payment for services rendered in the Emma Larson matter. As requested, all fabricated documents, false surveillance photos, and fraudulent bank records have been permanently destroyed. The actors hired to pose as Meridian Industries employees have been paid their bonuses and reminded of their non-disclosure agreements. Mrs. Victoria Drake has expressed satisfaction with the project's outcome and has recommended our services to several associates. We appreciate her business and look forward to future collaborations. Regards, Carson Investigative Services. Nathan stared at the screen, reading the email over and over as the full magnitude of what had been done crashed over him like a tsunami of betrayal. The evidence against Emma, every single piece of it had been fabricated. The bank records, the photographs, the meetings with Meridian Industries, everything. It had all been lies, carefully crafted and professionally executed at his mother's direction, designed to destroy the woman he loved. My God, Nathan whispered, sinking into Oliver's chair as his legs gave out completely. Emma was innocent. She was completely innocent, and I destroyed her. The timeline began to piece itself together with horrible clarity. Victoria had orchestrated everything from the moment Nathan first mentioned Emma's name, the investigation, the fabricated evidence, to the board pressure. All of it designed to eliminate the threat Emma posed to Victoria's control over her son's life. Nathan's hands shook as he forwarded the email to his personal account, then began searching through Oliver's files for any other evidence of the conspiracy. What he found made him physically ill. Financial records showing payments to the investigative firm, communications detailing the exact fabrications needed, even notes about timing the revelation for maximum emotional impact. His mother had planned Emma's destruction with the precision of a military campaign. Nathan stumbled back to his office and collapsed into his chair, the weight of his betrayal crushing down on him. Emma had begged him to investigate, had pleaded with him to look deeper into the evidence. She'd sworn her innocence right up until the moment she signed the divorce papers, and he'd dismissed her protests as the desperate lies of someone caught in their deception. He'd chosen his mother's lies over his wife's truth. He'd chosen duty and fear over love and trust. He had destroyed the most precious thing in his life because he'd been too cowardly to believe in something beautiful. The intercom buzzed, startling him out of his spiral of self-recrimination. Mr. Drake, the night security guard's voice was cautious. Your mother is here to see you. Nathan's grief crystallized into rage so pure and consuming that he could barely speak. Send her up. Victoria swept into his office 5 minutes later, elegant and perfectly composed as always. She was wearing the smile she reserved for moments when she was particularly pleased with herself. Nathaniel, darling, you're working so late again. You really must learn to delegate more effectively. She settled into the chair across from his desk as if she owned the place, which, Nathan realized, she essentially did. I was just having dinner with Eleanor Ashworth, and she mentioned that the Sinclair girl might be perfect for you. She's lovely, well-bred, and her father owns. Shut up. Victoria's perfectly arched eyebrows rose in surprise. Excuse me? I said, shut up, Mother. Nathan's voice was deadly quiet as he turned his computer screen toward her. Would you like to explain this? Victoria's face went pale as she read the email, but she recovered quickly. Nathaniel, I have no idea what you're talking about. This must be some kind of mistake. Carson Investigative Services, Nathan continued, his voice getting stronger with each word. Ring any bells? How about the $200,000 you paid them to fabricate evidence against my wife? Ex-wife, Victoria corrected automatically, then seemed to realize what she'd revealed. Nathaniel, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Nathan stood up, towering over his mother for the first time in his adult life. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed the woman I love. You turned me into the kind of man who would betray his own wife based on lies. She was wrong for you. Victoria's composure finally cracked, revealing the calculating manipulator underneath. She was common, grasping, completely inappropriate for someone in your position. I was protecting you. You were protecting your control over me. Nathan cut her off. Emma was the best thing that ever happened to me, and you couldn't stand that she made me happy. She was a gold digger. She never touched a penny of my money, Nathan roared. She signed the divorce papers without even reading the settlement terms. She walked away from millions of dollars because she had too much dignity to take anything from the man who'd betrayed her so completely. Victoria stood as well, her own anger finally showing. She was making you weak, Nathaniel soffed. She was turning you against your own family. You are not my family, Nathan said, each word precise and cutting like surgical steel. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and destroy innocent people. Family doesn't sacrifice the people they love for power and control. You're a stranger to me now. Everything I did for you. Everything you did for yourself. Nathan moved around the desk to stand directly in front of his mother. You couldn't bear to lose your influence over me. So you destroyed the woman who might have set me free. Victoria's mask slipped completely now, revealing the cold calculation underneath. Fine. Yes, I orchestrated it all. But I was right about her, Nathaniel. She was wrong for you. Wrong for this family. Wrong for the business. You would have realized it eventually. Get out, Nathaniel. Get out of my office. Get out of my building. And get out of my life. Nathan's voice was ice cold. You're fired from the board of directors, effective immediately. Your access to company accounts is revoked. Your corporate credit cards are canceled. And your position as family liaison is terminated. Victoria stared at him in shock. You can't be serious. I'm your mother. You stopped being my mother the day you decided to destroy my wife, Nathan said. Security will escort you from the building. Any attempt to contact me or interfere with my business will result in criminal charges. For the first time in his life, Nathan saw his mother look genuinely afraid. Nathaniel, please, we can work this out. We can find a way. The only thing I want from you now is Emma's current address, Nathan said. And then I never want to see you again. After Victoria left, escorted out by security like a common criminal, Nathan sat alone in his office and finally understood the full scope of what he'd lost. Emma had been innocent completely, absolutely innocent, and he'd chosen to believe the worst of her. He had divorced the woman he loved, cast her out of his life, and let her believe that their entire relationship had been meaningless to him. The magnitude of his betrayal was staggering. But somewhere out there, Emma was alive and building a life without him, which meant maybe, somehow, there was still a chance to make things right. Nathan reached for his phone and dialed his personal investigator. It was time to find his wife. Chapter 7. The Search. Finding someone who didn't want to be found, Nathan discovered, was far more difficult than he'd imagined. Emma had vanished from her old life so completely that it was as if she'd never existed. Her former apartment had been rented to someone else within a month of their divorce. Her small consulting firm had been dissolved. The clients transferred to associates. Even her old friends claimed they hadn't heard from her in 2 years. Nathan spent 3 sleepless weeks following dead-end leads and chasing shadows. His private investigator, Liam Carter, had been apologetic but honest. She covered her tracks professionally. Mr. Drac, a new social security number, new bank accounts, probably a new name. Whoever helped her disappear knew what they were doing. The irony wasn't lost on Nathan. He was employing the same methods his mother had used to destroy Emma. Only now he was trying to find her instead of frame her. The parallel made his stomach turn. But he pressed on. He had to find her. He had to try to make this right. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Nathan was leaving his office late one Thursday evening when he ran into Ethan Lynn, Emma's former colleague from the charity gala, in the lobby of the building where Ethan now worked. Nathan recognized him immediately. They'd met briefly that first night when Emma had been with Liam Carter. Nathan. Ethan looked shocked to see him. What are you doing here? Meeting with potential investors, Nathan said automatically, then stopped. "Ethan, I need to ask you something. Have you heard from Emma at all? Do you know where she is?" Ethan's expression immediately became guarded. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I need to apologize to her," Nathan said quietly, his voice raw with months of suppressed anguish. "Because I need to tell her the truth about what happened. Ethan, I destroyed the most precious thing in my life based on lies, and I have to try to make it right." "The truth?" Ethan's voice was sharp with disbelief. "The truth is that you threw away the best woman you'll ever meet because you believed she was a gold digger. The truth is that Emma loved you more than her own life. And you destroyed her." Nathan flinched, but didn't back down. "The truth is that my mother fabricated all the evidence against Emma. The bank records, the photographs, the meetings with Meridian Industries, all of it was fake. Emma was completely innocent." Ethan stared at him for a long moment, his expression shifting from anger to shock to something that might have been hope. "You're serious?" "Completely serious," Nathan said. "Ethan, I know you have no reason to help me, but if you know anything at all about where Emma is, I'm begging you. I need to find her." Ethan was quiet for so long that Nathan thought he was going to refuse. Then he sighed heavily. "She goes by Emma Sullivan now," Ethan said finally. "She moved to Seattle and started her own consulting firm, Phoenix Strategic Solutions. That's all I know." Nathan felt his heart start beating again for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Ethan, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan said grimly. "Nathan, what you did to Harriet nearly destroyed her. She loved you completely, and you made her feel like that love was worthless. If you're planning to waltz back into her life, expecting forgiveness, you're going to be disappointed." "I don't expect forgiveness," Nathan said. "I just need her to know the truth." The flight to Seattle felt like the longest 6 hours of Nathan's life. He'd booked a ticket under an assumed name, not wanting to risk Emma hearing about his arrival through news reports or social media. She deserved to hear this from him directly, not from gossip columns speculating about his sudden trip to the Pacific Northwest. Phoenix Strategic Solutions occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown building with views of Elliott Bay. Nathan stood across the street for nearly an hour, working up the courage to cross the threshold. The company wasn't huge. Emma had built it carefully, focusing on quality over quantity, taking on select high-profile clients who valued her expertise over flashy presentations. What impressed Nathan most was that she'd done it all herself, with no family connections or inherited advantages to smooth the way. Finally, he forced himself to move. Whatever happened, he owed her the truth. The reception area was elegant but warm, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that spoke of success without ostentation. The young woman at the front desk looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'd like to see Emma Sullivan, please," Nathan said, his voice steadier than he felt. "My name is Nathan Drake." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. "Do you have an appointment, Mr. Drake?" "No, but please tell her it's urgent. Personal." The receptionist picked up her phone and spoke in low tones for several moments. Nathan couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see the surprise on her face. Finally, she hung up. "Miss Sullivan will see you," she said, sounding slightly bewildered. "Her office is at the end of the hall." Nathan's hands were shaking as he walked down the corridor, lined with awards and accolades. Phoenix Strategic Solutions had clearly become a major success. Nathan recognized the logos of several Fortune 500 companies among their client testimonials. Emma had built something remarkable from nothing, just as she'd always said she would. He knocked softly on the door, marked Emma Sullivan, CEO, and heard a familiar voice call, "Come in." Nothing could have prepared him for the sight of Emma behind her desk. She was more beautiful than he remembered, more poised and confident than the woman who'd walked out of his life 2 years ago. Her hair was shorter now, styled in a sleek bob that framed her face elegantly. She wore a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month, and her makeup was flawless. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were guarded, weary, and completely devoid of the warmth he remembered. "Hello, Nathan," Emma said, her voice professionally polite. "Please sit down." Nathan remained standing, suddenly unsure how to begin. "Emma, thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Emma said, leaning back in her leather chair. But curiosity got the better of me. It's been what? 2 years. I assume this isn't a social call. Nathan winced at the ice in her tone. But he deserved it. Emma, I need to tell you something about the divorce, about what happened between us. I discovered the truth. Emma's expression didn't change, but Nathan saw her hands tighten almost imperceptibly on her chair arms. The truth? My mother fabricated everything, Nathan said. The words tumbling out in a rush. The evidence against you, the bank records, the photographs, all of it was fake. She hired investigators to create false documents and paid actors to pose as employees of a company that barely existed. You were completely innocent. And I... Stop. Emma's voice cut through his confession like a blade. Nathan fell silent, watching as Emma stood and moved to the window overlooking the bay. Her back was rigid, her shoulders tense. Do you have any idea, Emma said quietly, what it's like to have the person you love most in the world look at you like you're a stranger? Like everything you shared was a lie? Do you know what it's like to have your heart ripped out and handed back to you in pieces? Emma, to be told that your love, your honest, pure, complete love, meant nothing? Emma turned to face him, and Nathan saw tears glittering in her eyes. It meant everything, Nathan said desperately. Emma, you have to believe me. You were the most important thing in my life. I was scared and confused, and I let my mother manipulate me into choosing her over you, into believing the worst about me instead of fighting for us. Nathan felt like he was drowning. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know the truth. Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying his face with an intensity that made him feel stripped bare. Why now? She asked finally. Why tell me this now? Because I found evidence of what she did, Nathan said. And because I couldn't live with myself knowing you thought I'd never loved you. Because even if you can never forgive me, you deserve to know that you were right all along. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was right. How wonderful for me. She moved back to her desk, her movements sharp and controlled. Is that all, Nathan? Is that why you came here to ease your guilty conscience? I came here because I love you, Nathan said, the truth spilling out before he could stop himself. Because I've been dying a little bit every day for 2 years, knowing I threw away the best thing in my life. Because I was hoping what? Emma's voice was dangerous now. That I'd fall into your arms? That I'd thank you for finally believing me? That we'd ride off into the sunset and pretend the last 2 years never happened? Nathan saw his own pain reflected in her eyes and realized the magnitude of what he'd lost. I was hoping you might give me a chance to earn your forgiveness. Forgiveness? Emma repeated, as if testing the word. Nathan, you didn't just divorce me. You made me question everything about myself, my worth, my judgment. You made me wonder if I was the kind of person who could lie and manipulate and betray. You destroyed my trust in my own judgment, in my own worth. Emma, please. I spent months in therapy, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger, months rebuilding my self-esteem, learning to trust my own perceptions again. I had to completely reinvent myself, start over from nothing, because the life we'd planned together was built on quicksand. Nathan felt tears burning his eyes. I know I hurt you. I know I failed you in every way that mattered. But Emma, what we had was real. That wasn't fake, even if everything else was. Was it real? Emma asked. And the doubt in her voice cut him to the bone. Because the man I fell in love with would have fought for me. He would have trusted me. He would have chosen love over fear. I'm not that man anymore, Nathan said quietly. I'm trying to become him again. But I know I might be too late. Emma was quiet for so long that Nathan thought she wasn't going to respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There's someone at the door. Nathan turned to see a young woman in the doorway, Emma's assistant. He assumed, Miss Sullivan. The woman said hesitantly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have the Morrison meeting in 10 minutes. Thank you, Rachel, Emma said, her professional mask sliding back into place. Mr. Drake was just leaving. Nathan knew a dismissal when he heard one, but he couldn't bring himself to move. "Emma, please, can we talk more? Maybe dinner or—" "No," Emma said firmly. "Nathan, I'm glad you told me the truth. Really. But I've moved on. I've built a life here, and I won't let you disrupt it." Nathan nodded, his heart breaking all over again. "If you change your mind," he said, pulling out a business card and setting it on her desk. "My number is on there. Day or night, Emma, I'll wait as long as it takes." As he reached the door, Emma's voice stopped him. "Nathan." When he turned back, she was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Sorry, it took 2 years for you to find the courage to believe in me." Nathan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. As he walked out of her office, he heard Emma's assistant say something that made his heart skip. "Miss Sullivan, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "In a way," Emma replied, her voice so soft Nathan could barely hear it. "I have—" Outside, on the busy Seattle street, Nathan stood in the rain and finally understood the full scope of his loss. Emma had survived his betrayal and built something beautiful from the ashes of their destroyed marriage. She was strong and successful, and had every reason to never trust him again. But she'd kept his business card, and for now, that was enough to give him hope. Chapter 8. The Encounter. Nathan didn't leave Seattle immediately. Against every reasonable instinct, against the advice of his legal team, who kept calling about urgent matters requiring his attention, and against the voice in his head that warned him he was crossing into dangerous territory, he stayed. He checked into the Four Seasons under an assumed name and began what he privately called his campaign for redemption. Though he knew the odds of success were virtually non-existent, he wasn't stalking her. Nathan was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries and never approach her private residence. He was simply learning about the life she'd built, understanding the woman she'd become in his absence. Emma arrived at her office every morning at precisely 7:30, usually carrying coffee from the little cafe 2 blocks away and the Wall Street Journal tucked under her arm. She left most evenings between 6 and 7, sometimes stopping at the organic grocery store in the business district. She lived alone in a converted loft in the arts district. Nathan discovered after following her home one evening at a discreet distance. The building was beautiful exposed brick and large windows, the kind of place that spoke of artistic sensibility and substantial success. She'd chosen well. For 2 weeks, Nathan simply observed, trying to understand who Emma had become in his absence. She seemed confident, self-assured, completely in control of her world. She'd built something remarkable from nothing, just as she'd always said she would. The knowledge filled him with pride and regret in equal measure. On a Thursday morning, Nathan finally worked up the courage to approach her again. He timed his walk perfectly, arriving at the coffee shop just as Emma was placing her order. Large coffee, black, with a shot of vanilla and a blueberry scone. Emma was saying to the barista, a young man with elaborate tattoos who seemed to know her well. "Actually," Nathan said, stepping up beside her. "Make that 2 of each." Emma turned, and Nathan saw several emotions flicker across her face: of surprise, irritation, and something that might have been carefully suppressed pleasure. "Nathan," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "what are you doing here?" "Getting coffee," Nathan said with what he hoped was a disarming smile. "Same as you." "At 7:30 in the morning, at a cafe 2,000 miles from your home, ordering exactly what I order?" Emma's eyebrow arched skeptically. "That's kinda coincidence." "Okay, you got me," Nathan said, holding up his hands in surrender. "I'm buying you coffee and hoping you'll let me walk with you to your office." 5 minutes, Emma. That's all I'm asking." Emma studied his face for a long moment while the barista prepared their orders. Nathan could practically see her weighing her options: cause a scene by rejecting him publicly, or give him the 5 minutes and get him out of her life quickly. 5 minutes, she said finally. Not a second more. They walked in silence for the first block, sipping their coffee and navigating the morning rush of downtown Seattle. Nathan was acutely aware of Emma beside him, the subtle scent of her perfume, the efficient click of her heels on the pavement, the way she held herself with newfound confidence. "You look good," Nathan said finally. "Successful." "Happy." "I am successful," Emma replied without looking at him, "and I was happy until you showed up." Nathan winced but pressed on. "Your company is impressive. Phoenix Strategic Solutions. I looked you up." "Of course you did," Emma said dryly. "Find anything interesting?" "A client roster that reads like the Fortune 500. Nathan said. "Industry awards, speaking engagements, a profile in Business Week calling you one of the top financial consultants on the West Coast. You've built something incredible, Emma." For just a moment, Emma's professional mask slipped, and Nathan caught a glimpse of the woman he'd fallen in love with, proud, determined, vulnerable underneath her strength. "I had to," she said quietly. "I had to prove to myself that I was more than just the woman Nathan Drake threw away." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. "Emma." 4.5 minutes, Emma said, checking her watch. "You wanted to walk me to work, so walk. But don't think this means anything." They turned the corner onto Emma's street, her building coming into view. Nathan felt panic rising in his chest as his time ran out. "I fired my mother," he said suddenly. "From the board, from the company, from my life. She's completely cut off." Emma stopped walking, turning to stare at him. "What?" "After I found out what she did, I fired her from everything," Nathan continued. "She doesn't have access to company funds, company decisions, or me. I haven't spoken to her since the night I discovered her lies." "Nathan," Emma said, and he heard something like shock in her voice. "She's your mother. She stopped being my mother the night she destroyed my marriage," Nathan said firmly. "Emma, I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that she's paying for what she did." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "That must have been difficult for you." "Not as difficult as losing you," Nathan said. "Emma, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would you have dinner with me? Just dinner?" "Let me try to explain." "No," Emma said, but her voice lacked its earlier firmness. "Nathan, I can't. I won't put myself through that again." They had reached her building, and Emma's 5 minutes were up. Nathan watched her climb the steps to the entrance, memorizing every detail of her the way the morning light caught her hair, the confident set of her shoulders, the grace of her movements. "Emma," he called as she reached the door. "I'm not giving up." She turned back, and for just a moment, Nathan saw something raw and vulnerable in her eyes. "Maybe you should." But as Nathan walked back to his hotel, he noticed something that gave him hope. Emma stood in the lobby of her building for several minutes after he left, watching him through the glass doors. She was fighting something, some internal battle between her head and her heart. And hearts, Nathan had learned, were remarkably persistent things. Over the next week, Nathan mounted a careful campaign, not harassment. He was scrupulously respectful of her boundaries, but a gentle, persistent presence in her world. Anonymous flower deliveries to her office, always jasmine, because he remembered it was her favorite. A donation to the children's hospital where they'd met, made in both their names. Small gestures that said, "I remember who you are," without demanding anything in return. Nathan also began investigating Victoria's remaining schemes, determined to undo as much damage as possible. He discovered that his mother had spread rumors throughout their old social circle, painting Emma as a gold digger who tried to trap him. One by one, Nathan began setting the record straight, though he suspected Emma would never hear about most of these conversations. The breakthrough came on a Friday evening. Nathan was having dinner alone at a small restaurant near Emma's office building when she walked in with a tall, distinguished man in his 50s. When Emma excused herself to visit the restroom, Nathan found himself standing before he'd consciously decided to move. The other man looked up in surprise as Nathan approached his table. "Excuse me," Nathan said, extending his hand. "I'm Nathan Drake. I couldn't help but notice you're dining with Emma Sullivan. I hope you don't mind the interruption." The man, who introduced himself as William Morrison, seemed startled but shook Nathan's hand. "Of course. Emma's mentioned you. Actually, you're her ex-husband." Nathan nodded. "Mr. Morrison, I know this is presumptuous, but I wonder if you could tell me something. Is she seeing anyone romantically, I mean?" William's eyebrows rose. "That's a rather personal question, Mr. Drake." "I know, and I know I have no right to ask, but I'm trying to win her back, and I need to know if I'm fighting a losing battle." William studied Nathan's face for a long moment. "Emma is one of the most remarkable women I've ever met," he said finally. "Brilliant, driven, absolutely uncompromising in her integrity. She's also one of the loneliest people I know." Nathan's heart clenched. "Lonely?" "She hasn't dated anyone since she moved to Seattle," William said quietly. "Not for lack of opportunity. Half the eligible men in the city have asked her out, but she's built walls around herself that no one seems able to breach." Before Nathan could respond, he saw Emma returning from the restroom. She spotted him immediately, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder. "Nathan," she said as she reached the table, "what are you doing here?" "Having dinner," Nathan said, then looked at William. "I'm sorry for interrupting your evening, Mr. Morrison. It was nice meeting you." As Nathan turned to leave, Emma caught his arm. Her touch sent electricity through him, just as it always had. "Wait," she said, then seemed to realize she was touching him and jerked her hand back. "This has to stop, Nathan. The flowers, the donations, following me around the city, it has to stop." "Okay," Nathan said simply. "If that's what you want, I'll stop." Emma blinked, clearly having expected more of a fight. "Just like that?" "Just like that," Nathan confirmed. "Emma, I came here to tell you the truth and to try to earn your forgiveness. I've told you the truth. As for forgiveness," he shrugged, "that's your choice to make." "Good," Emma said, but she sounded almost disappointed. "Good. Then we understand each other." "We do," Nathan agreed. "Emma, for what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built here. You deserve every bit of your success." As Nathan walked away, he felt Emma's eyes on him until he turned the corner. He'd meant what he said. He would stop pursuing her if that's what she truly wanted. But something in her expression when she'd grabbed his arm suggested that what Emma wanted and what she thought she should want were two very different things. Nathan returned to his hotel room and began packing. He'd given Emma the truth and shown her that he was willing to respect her boundaries. Now the next move had to be hers. But as he folded his clothes into his suitcase, Nathan allowed himself one last hope. Emma had touched him tonight, had reached out without thinking, and for just a moment, he'd seen the woman he'd fallen in love with looking back at him. Sometimes, Nathan reflected, the strongest walls were the ones most desperately in need of being torn down. Chapter 9. The Courtship Redux. 3 weeks after Nathan left Seattle, Emma found herself staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of her loft, trying to understand the hollow ache that had settled in her chest. Life had returned to her carefully constructed normal, the controlled, predictable existence she'd built, like armor around her wounded heart. She went to work, managed her clients, attended business dinners, and came home to her beautiful, empty apartment. It was exactly the life she'd worked so hard to achieve, exactly what she'd needed to survive. So why did she feel like she was slowly suffocating? The flowers had stopped, just as Nathan had promised. No more Jasmine arrangements appearing mysteriously at her office. No more charitable donations made in their joint names. No more glimpses of him in coffee shops or on street corners. He'd vanished from her life as completely as he'd appeared, respecting her wishes exactly as she'd demanded. Emma should have been relieved. Instead, she felt oddly hollow. "Miss Sullivan," Rachel Blake knocked softly on Emma's office door. "The Henderson Industries contracts are ready for your review." Emma looked up from the financial reports she'd been staring at without reading. Henderson Industries? The pharmaceutical company? They want to restructure their international holdings. Rachel's expression was concerned. "We've been working on this for 3 weeks." Emma shook her head, trying to focus. She'd been distracted lately, her usually sharp mind wandering at the most inconvenient times. "Of course. Yes. Bring them in." As Rachel set the thick contract folder on her desk, she hesitated. "Miss Sullivan, are you feeling all right? You seem distant lately." "I'm fine," Emma said automatically, then caught herself. Rachel had been with her for over a year, had proven herself trustworthy and discreet. "Actually, Rachel, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you think it's possible to miss something that almost destroyed you?" Emma asked, feeling vulnerable and exposed. "I mean, logically, You know something was devastating, but emotionally, part of you still yearns for what it could have been. Rachel sat down in the chair across from Emma's desk, her expression thoughtful. Are we talking about your ex-husband? Emma's startled look must have been answer enough. Miss Sullivan, I've worked for a lot of powerful women, Rachel said gently. I've seen them juggle million-dollar deals and hostile takeovers without breaking a sweat. But I've never seen anyone react to a person the way you reacted to Nathan Drake. Whatever happened between you two, it wasn't simple. He broke my heart, Emma said quietly. He made me believe he loved me, then threw me away based on lies. But he came back, Rachel pointed out. He came here, told you the truth, respected your boundaries when you asked him to leave. That doesn't sound like someone who throws people away. Emma was quiet for a long moment, turning Rachel's words over in her mind. It doesn't matter now, anyway. He's gone. Is he? Before Emma could ask what Rachel meant, her assistant was pulling out her tablet and scrolling through what looked like business news. Drake Industries just announced a new corporate responsibility initiative, Rachel said, showing Emma the screen. They're funding a complete overhaul of the children's hospital where you used to volunteer. The press release says it's to honor someone who taught the CEO about the importance of giving back to the community. Emma's breath caught as she read the article. Nathan had donated $50 million to completely renovate the children's hospital where they'd met. Modernizing the facilities and funding new research programs. The donation was anonymous except for one detail. It was made in memory of a love that changed everything. He's still thinking about you, Rachel said softly. Miss Sullivan, I know it's not my place, but maybe some things are worth fighting for. That evening, Emma found herself walking through Pike Place Market, not really shopping, but needing the energy and chaos of the crowd to drown out her thoughts. She was examining a display of fresh flowers when a familiar voice made her freeze. The jasmine is beautiful today. Emma turned to find Nathan standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. He looked tired, she noticed, thinner than when she'd last seen him, but his eyes still held that intensity that had first drawn her to him all those years ago. Nathan, she said, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. I thought you'd gone back to New York. I did, Nathan said. I'm here on business. Meetings about the hospital donation. $50 million, Emma said. That's quite a donation. Nathan shrugged. It's a good cause. Someone once told me that places like that are where real healing happens. Emma felt tears prick her eyes as she recognized her own words from their first conversation at the charity gala. Nathan, I should let you get back to your shopping, Nathan said, already starting to turn away. I just wanted to say hello. Wait, Emma said, the word escaping before she could stop it. Nathan paused, hope flickering in his eyes. Would you like to get coffee? Just coffee, nothing more. Nathan's smile was like sunrise after a long night. I'd love that. They found a small cafe overlooking the water, sitting at a corner table where they could watch the ferries crossing the Sound. For the first few minutes, they talked about safe things, the weather, the city, Emma's business. But gradually, the conversation deepened. I've been going to therapy, Nathan said suddenly, surprising them both. Trying to understand how I became the kind of man who could doubt someone he loved based on manufactured evidence. Emma's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. And what have you learned? That I spent so many years being manipulated by my mother that I forgot how to trust my own judgment, Nathan said quietly. That I was so afraid of being vulnerable, of being hurt, that I chose to believe the worst instead of fighting for the best. Nathan, I'm not telling you this to make excuses, Nathan continued. What I did to you was unforgivable. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I'm trying to become the man you deserved all along. Emma set down her cup with shaking hands. Why are you really here, Nathan? In Seattle, I mean. Don't tell me it's just business. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. Because I can't stop loving you, he said finally. I've tried, Emma. God knows I've tried. But every morning I wake up missing you. And every night I go to sleep, regretting the choices that drove you away. Love isn't enough, Emma said. But her voice lacked conviction. Trust, once broken, can be rebuilt. Nathan finished. If both people are willing to try. Emma felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crack. Nathan, you hurt me. You made me question everything about myself, my worth, my judgment. Do you understand that? I'm beginning to, Nathan said. And I know I have no right to ask this. But would you consider giving us another chance? Not rushing into anything. Just spending time together. Letting me try to earn back your trust. Emma stared at him, seeing not the powerful CEO who'd dismissed her protests, but the vulnerable man who'd once told her his dreams under artificial stars. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Nathan said. Terrified. Actually, but Emma, what we had it was real. It was beautiful and pure and worth fighting for. I lost sight of that once. I won't make that mistake again. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it automatically, then froze. What is it? Nathan asked, seeing her expression. Emma showed him the message. It was from an unknown number, but the content was clear. Stay away from my son, or you'll regret it. Some people never learn their place. Nathan's face went white, then red with fury. Victoria, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Even after everything, she's still trying to control the situation. She's been sending these for weeks, Emma admitted. Anonymous threats, warnings to stay away from you. I thought they'd stopped when you left Seattle, but apparently cutting her off financially didn't stop her from hiring people to monitor your activities. Nathan was already pulling out his phone. This ends now, he said, dialing rapidly. Liam, it's Nathan. I need you to trace a phone number and find out how my mother got Emma's personal contact information. Yes, immediately. As Nathan spoke with his investigator, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Nathan's immediate, protective response to the threat against her, his obvious fury at his mother's continued manipulation reminded her of the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd promised to protect and cherish her. Nathan, she said when he finished his call, that dinner you mentioned, maybe we could try it. Nathan's eyes went wide with hope. Really? Really, Emma said, feeling terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. But we take this slow. No grand gestures, no promises about the future. Just two people getting to know each other again. Whatever you want, Nathan said immediately. Emma, I'll do whatever it takes. As they left the cafe together, Emma caught a glimpse of their reflection in the window, two people who'd been torn apart by lies and betrayal, taking tentative steps towards something that might possibly be healing. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was hope. And sometimes, Emma thought, as Nathan's hand briefly touched hers, hope was enough to start rebuilding a world. Chapter 10. The Passionate Reunion. 2 months of careful courtship had passed like a dream wrapped in razor wire. Nathan had kept his word. No grand gestures, no pressure, just quiet persistence and patient devotion. Coffee meetings that stretched into lunch, walks through the market that became evening conversations, business dinners that slowly transformed into something more intimate and precious. Emma had watched Nathan with the wariness of someone who'd been burned by the sun but still craved its warmth, cataloging every gesture, every word, every moment of sincerity or potential deception. But gradually, against every self-protective instinct she possessed, she'd begun to see glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with, the real Nathan. Not the one his mother had shaped or the one fear had twisted, but the vulnerable, brilliant, deeply loving man who'd once promised her forever. Still, she'd kept him at arm's length, polite kisses on the cheek, careful distance, walls that she'd built for protection and couldn't quite bring herself to tear down. Until tonight. Emma. Nathan had said after their dinner at a small Italian restaurant near her loft, I need to tell you something about why I really divorced you. Nathan, we've been over this, Emma had replied. But something in his voice stopped her from walking away. Not all of it, Nathan said quietly. There's something I've never told you. Something I was too ashamed to admit, even to myself. Now Emma stood in her apartment, pacing nervously as she waited for Nathan to arrive. She'd invited him up for the first time since he'd returned to Seattle, needing privacy for whatever revelation he thought would change everything between them. Her loft felt too small suddenly, the walls closing in as anticipation and anxiety warred in her chest. The soft knock on her door made her heart skip. Emma smoothed her hands over her simple black dress knot chosen for seduction. She told herself, just because it made her feel confident, and opened the door. Nathan stood in the hallway, holding a single jasmine flower, his expression vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and his dark hair was mussed, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," Emma replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Come in." Nathan entered her space with reverent care, his eyes taking in every detail of the home she'd built without him, the exposed brick walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the mix of modern furniture and vintage pieces that spoke of Emma's impeccable taste and hard-won success. "It's beautiful," Nathan said, offering her the jasmine. "Like you." Emma accepted the flower, inhaling its sweet fragrance as memories of their wedding day crashed over her. "Nathan, what did you want to tell me?" Nathan moved to the windows, staring out at the glittering lights of Seattle below. "The real reason I divorced you wasn't just because I believed my mother's lies," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It was because I was a coward." "What do you mean?" Nathan turned to face her, his expression raw with regret. "When my mother showed me that fabricated evidence, part of me was relieved." Emma felt like she'd been slapped. "Relieved?" "Not because I wanted to believe you'd betrayed me," Nathan said quickly, seeing her expression, "but because it gave me an excuse to run. Emma, what we had was so intense, so overwhelming, that it terrified me. I'd never felt anything like it before, never been so vulnerable with another person. So you decided to destroy it instead?" Emma said, her voice flat. "I thought I was protecting myself," Nathan admitted. "And in some twisted way, I thought I was protecting you, too. I convinced myself that divorcing you would keep you safe from my mother's manipulations, that if I could just fix everything quickly and quietly, I could come back to you with a clean slate." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "You thought abandoning me would protect me." "I thought I could control the situation," Nathan said miserably. "I thought I could manage the damage, keep you from being hurt worse than you already were. I was going to divorce you, deal with my mother privately, then find a way to win you back once the dust settled." "But you never came back," Emma whispered. "Because by the time I realized how stupid I'd been, you were gone." Nathan said, his voice breaking. "You disappeared completely, and I spent 2 years thinking you hated me, thinking you'd moved on, found someone better, someone who deserved you." Emma felt tears streaming down her face as the full scope of Nathan's misguided attempt at protection became clear. "You broke my heart to save me from being hurt. I destroyed the most precious thing in my life because I was too afraid to fight for it," Nathan said, moving closer to her. "Emma, I know it doesn't excuse anything. I know sorry isn't enough. But I needed you to know that every moment of every day for 2 years, I've regretted letting you go." "Nathan," Emma began. But he continued, the words pouring out like a dam had burst. "I love you," Nathan said desperately. "I love your strength, your integrity, your brilliant mind, your compassionate heart. I love the way you laugh at terrible movies and cry during commercials about animals. I love that you put honey in your coffee and that you sing off-key in the shower. I love everything about you, Emma, and I've been dying without you." Emma felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling as Nathan's confession washed over her. She could see the truth in his eyes, feel the sincerity radiating from every word. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd been hidden beneath layers of fear and manipulation. "You absolute idiot," Emma said, her voice thick with tears and laughter, and something that felt dangerously like hope. "I know," Nathan said, stepping closer. "I'm an idiot who threw away heaven because I was too scared to believe I deserved it." "Nathan," Emma whispered as he reached out to cup her face in his hands. "Tell me it's not too late," Nathan pleaded, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Tell me there's still some part of you that remembers what we had." Instead of answering with words, Emma rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was meant to be gentle, tentative, a careful testing of waters that had been turbulent for so long. But the moment their lips met, 2 years of suppressed longing exploded between them. Nathan's arms came around her waist, pulling her against him as if he couldn't bear even an inch of space between them. Emma's hands tangled in his hair, holding him to her as if he might disappear if she let go. The kiss deepened, became desperate and hungry and full of everything they'd been denied. "Emma," Nathan breathed against her lips. "My God, I've missed you." "I never stopped loving you," Emma confessed, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I tried to move on, tried to forget, but I never stopped loving you." Nathan's response was to kiss her again, deeper this time, with a passion that made her knees weak. Emma melted against him, feeling 2 years of loneliness and heartbreak dissolving in the heat of his embrace. "I want you," Nathan whispered, his lips trailing down her throat. "I've wanted you every day for 2 years. Dreamed of holding you again, touching you again." "Then touch me," Emma said, her voice husky with desire. "Nathan, I need you. I've needed you for so long." Nathan's hands moved to the zipper of her dress, his fingers trembling slightly as he slowly drew it down. "Are you sure, Emma? If we do this, I'm never letting you go again." "Never." "I'm counting on it," Emma said, letting her dress pool at her feet. Nathan's sharp intake of breath made her feel powerful and beautiful and cherished. His hands moved over her skin with reverent care, as if he were memorizing every curve, every freckle, every detail he'd been denied. "You're so beautiful," Nathan murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "So perfect." Emma's response was to begin unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers working quickly to remove the barriers between them. When his chest was bare, she pressed her palms against his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her touch. "I love you," she said, looking into his eyes. "I love you, Nathan Drake. And I'm done pretending I don't." Nathan lifted her then, carrying her to the bedroom with careful steps. He laid her on the bed like she was made of spun glass, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, more precious. "I love you too," Nathan said, settling beside her and pulling her into his arms. "More than my own life, more than anything in this world." When they came together, it was with 2 years of separation and longing and desperate need, but also with something deeper love that had been tested by fire and emerged purified. They moved together, first with desperate urgency, then with slow, worshipful reverence, relearning each other's bodies and souls. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss a vow. Every whispered endearment a prayer of gratitude for second chances. "I love you," Nathan breathed against her skin as they lay entwined afterward, moonlight streaming through Emma's windows like a benediction. "I love you with every broken piece of my heart, every damaged part of my soul." "I love you too," Emma whispered, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "I never stopped, even when I wanted to, even when it would have been easier." "Marry me," Nathan said suddenly, his voice quiet but certain. "I know we said we'd take things slow, and we will. But, Emma, I need you to know that this isn't temporary for me. This isn't just romance or nostalgia. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you, every single day, that you're the most important thing in my world." Emma lifted her head to look at him. "Nathan, I'm not asking for a wedding tomorrow," Nathan continued, stroking her hair. "I'm asking for your promise that we're building toward forever again, that you'll wear my ring while we take all the time you need to trust me completely." "What about your mother?" Emma asked. "The board of directors, all the things that drove us apart before." "I meant what I said before. Victoria is completely cut off from my life and my business," Nathan said firmly. "As for the board, they can accept my choice of wife or find themselves replaced. Emma, I'm not the same man who let fear make his decisions. I'm choosing love. I'm choosing you." Emma studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the determination and certainty there. This wasn't the conflicted, manipulated man who'd divorced her. This was the Nathan she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd promised to choose her every day. "Yes," she whispered, and Nathan's face lit up like dawn breaking. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you," Emma said, laughing as Nathan rolled them over and kissed her senseless. "But, Nathan, if you ever doubt me again, if you ever choose anyone else over me—" "Never," Nathan said fiercely. "Emma, you are my heart, my home, my everything. I will never doubt you again. Never let anyone come between us again. You have my word." As Nathan made love to her again, slower this time, with infinite tenderness and reverence, Emma felt the last of her protective barriers crumble completely. They had both been broken by what they'd lost. But now they were healing each other with every touch, every whispered promise, every vow of forever that they both meant with their entire beings. Outside, Seattle glittered in the darkness like scattered diamonds. But Emma was only aware of the man in her arms and the future they were creating together, one kiss at a time. They'd survived, the worst betrayal imaginable, had been torn apart by lies and fear and manipulation. But true love had proven stronger than all of it. Now it was time to discover just how magnificent their life could be when it was built on unshakable truth and unbreakable trust.